What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar here and welcome back to another one of my videos. So as you may or may not know, I am, well, a little late on a video like this because the announcement came out almost 2 weeks ago. But if you've been following me on other social media platforms, you may or may not know that I've been traveling a lot. For the first half of this month, I have been getting so many new coaster credits and many new park experiences that I am so excited to tell you all about. But first, I want to talk about the big announcement when I was gone. Cedar Point, one of my home parks, as you may or may not know, announced a brand new upgrade to one of their areas, the Boardwalk. This is the area stretching between Gatekeeper and Windseeker, and they are getting a major overhaul, including a new building called the Grand Pavilion, which we already knew, a relocation and upgrade of some flat rides in the park, and most of all, a brand new roller coaster. Yes, I said it, Cedar Point is getting a brand new roller coaster. And today I wanted to look at the roller coaster, give you a little bit of a detailed analysis, my thoughts, and at the end tell you if I think this is a good decision at the park or if it's going to be a failure. This is Cedar Flags, and today, here are my thoughts on Wild Mouse at Cedar Point. So, before I look at some pros and cons about the roller coaster and say if it's a good decision or not, I want to give a little bit of an analysis and overview. Now, you've probably heard a lot of the things I'm about to say, but as I state facts, I will state my personal opinion as the video goes on. So, Wild Mouse, the next coaster of Cedar Point. What is it for, and how is it going to complement the park? Well, it is a Zamperla freeform, which you don't know, is under the Twister coaster family. Now, if you don't know what a Twister coaster is, it is basically all of the Zamperla Wild Mice in a family. They are spinning Wild Mice coasters, and if you've even ridden like a Reverchon spinning mouse, you get the feel of these rides. These are everywhere, these are very common models, found at even carnivals as portable versions. So, how is this going to be any different? Well, it is a freeform model, which is going to be the first of its kind. Take a Wild Mouse but a little bigger and give a few more elements to it, including small overbank turns. I would best describe it as a mix of a Zamperla spinning Wild Mouse and a Mauer spinning coaster, if you get the gist of that. This is still going to be a smaller coaster though, only with a max height of 52 feet and a max speed of 35 miles an hour. Now, looking at the stats, it is definitely a little taller than their other Wild Mice, which range from 30 to 40 feet. And the track length, funny enough, is around the same length as other Wild Mice coasters. And looking at the layout, we don't necessarily know the exact layout, we haven't gotten an exact POV, but looking at renderings and pictures, we could easily tell what it is. It starts off with a nice first drop, which looks great, probably one of the best parts of the ride, and then it goes into a traditional Wild Mouse section. After that though, it gets pretty unorthodox. It looks like you take a little bit of a turn, and then goes into the final section of the ride, which looks to be a Twister section, filled with small overbank turns and helixes. So, what do I think of this ride overall? I think the appearance is great. I think it is really cool that they mashed together a bunch of elements found on other spinning coasters, and I love the theme of it. If you don't know, this is themed after the original Wild Mice coasters, which used to be at Cedar Point. I think this is a really good way to pay nostalgia to those former rides. It has a very modern feel, and it mixes modern thrills with old nostalgic memories. But let's look at the ride overall. Is it going to be a great fit for the park, or is it going to be a nightmare for a business perspective? So let's get into some pros and cons. First, I want to skim over the pros because I think it is very important to look at the positives first and then see how they contrast with the negatives. The first thing I want to talk about is that it fills in a huge gap. In that gap, it is the first spinning coaster at Cedar Point, and I think this is a big deal. No, it is not the huge Mach Extreme spinner that many people were expecting, but I think it definitely still fills in that gap, especially for families that only go here and haven't seen a coaster like this before. It is going to look completely unorthodox, and it's going to be a very good time. The second one is that this is the first family coaster at Cedar Point in years, no, decades, and I think that is a big deal within itself. The last time that they focused on families was back in the 90s, and I think that is a big deal because families want something new, just like us thrill seekers do. The second pro I was talking about, the first family coaster in decades, This pro is going to focus on the only family coaster in this area of the park. Think about it. When a kid is done riding all the rides at Planet Snoopy or Kitty Kingdom, they're going to want something a little more thrilling, but not something as big as a ride like Windseeker or Gatekeeper right nearby. And they're naturally going to resort to the Wild Mouse. Not too tall of a ride, but not too family oriented, because it is, like I said, a family thrill. And the fourth pro. I think this is a very good choice when it comes to companies, because you see other amusement parks trying to dabble with new manufacturers, and it doesn't really work too well. Cedar Point went with a manufacturer that they are good friends with in Zamperla, and decided to upgrade from just flat rides now to roller coasters. So I think this was definitely a good choice on the ride model, and definitely a good point for this area. So I have two cons that I want to mention, and the first one is a little more of a nitpick, while the second one is a pretty big deal in my personal opinion. Con number one is that it isn't too original of a coaster. Now, like I said, this is a prototype model from Zamperla, and it has a completely unique layout to the other Wild Mice coasters that exist. But at the end of the day, it is a variation of a Zamperla Wild Mouse, and if you're an enthusiast, you've probably seen these just about everywhere. Beach Bend, Fun Spot in Orlando and Kissimmee, you see this everywhere, like I said. And I have to say that seeing one of these at Cedar Point is going to be a little weird. It still gives you a little bit of that carnival vibe, because I have seen a few of these at portable locations. So like I said, even though that this roller coaster isn't going to be exactly a clone, it is not going to look too original compared to some other rides. And then con number two, the capacity. Yes, I knew this was coming from miles away. When they said they were going to get a Wild Mouse coaster, this was the first, and I mean the first thing I thought of. Cedar Point has very large crowds, and even looking at capacity machines like Maverick and Millennium Force, they also have very long lines, even on some light days. So this ride, I don't know how well it's going to fare. It is not as popular as rides like the bigger ones. This is going to be a family ride after all, but on a very busy day, and especially near the beginning of the year when this ride opens, this ride is going to get some nasty lines. So finally, let's get into the question, was it a good decision? If you asked me yes or no, I would simply say yes. I think it is a great decision for the park. It provides many pros, including a new family thrill, which I know a lot of people are complaining about, but Cedar Point definitely needed a new family ride because the thrill seekers and teenagers are not the only ones needing a new ride. Anyways, I don't think it is the best decision. In fact, with all those pros and cons aside, I think something that would keep all of the pros and knock off some of the cons would be a mock spinning coaster. And I don't mean a mock extreme spinner, I mean something smaller like Sierra Sidewinder at Knott's Berry Farm or Turbulence at Adventureland in New York. I think this would defeat the con of capacity because, well, bigger trains, and it would look very modern and original at the park, even though that it might be a slight clone. But anyways, I think I am pretty satisfied with the roller coaster that we got. Obviously, it's probably not going to be the best decision in your head, but keep in mind that Cedar Point is a business, and I think they know what they're doing over some people that just speculate. Anyways, I do think this is going to be a great addition to the park, and one of the best family thrills in the resort. So anyways, what do you think about this coaster? Let me know down in the comments below. This is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.